Hi everyone, my name is Jerry Opoka and I bring 10 years of experience and knowledge in the health, fitness, mental wellness and nutrition fields together to help us understand the human body, its language of communication and how best we can support it. And today I'm going to talk about vitamin D. While I sit every day in this same spot and soak up my fair share of it, I learned that we have a lot of people who are now deficient in vitamin D and acutely deficient in vitamin D. So it made me think, how is that even possible? We are in Africa at the equator. We own the sun. We have sun all year round. People come from all over the world, and one of the things they love the most about being here is the weather. So how can we, the indigenous people, be deficient? But I started understanding that, okay, fine. We wake up in the morning, go to work, stay inside our offices. We drive to the office, stay inside the office pretty much all day, leave after the sun has gone down. It started making sense how it's possible that we are deficient. But then it led me to the next question. So what exactly does vitamin D do? We know that we get it from the sun, so we have to be outdoors. And also during the pandemic, people who suffered from, who had COVID were told to go outside in the sun. But what is it exactly? So it sent me down a path of research to just understand, and I will tell you again and again, my mind is blown by how important this vitamin is. So let's dive right in. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin that is actually a hormone. Okay? Pretty much every cell in our bodies, has vitamin D receptors. That means every cell is ready to receive vitamin D, meaning they all need vitamin D. There are two kinds of vitamin D. There's a D2, which is a man-made vitamin D that is added to certain foods. And the other one is vitamin D3. That's the one we get from the sun predominantly, but we can also get it from animals, from fatty fish. And here in Uganda, we have fatty fish. There's catfish, mudfish, and Nile perch. I don't know, there must be other fatty fishes, but those are the three that I know. We also get it from liver, from animal liver, from fish eggs, rather chicken eggs, and from cheese, from dairy cheese. So the next question is, while we sit out in the sun or spend time in the sun, when is the best time to get vitamin D? Some people have come out and said at midday, and others have said, given a range of hours. And I thought to myself, okay, the range seems to run, from all the research that I've done, it seems to run from anywhere around 9 a.m. up till, I've seen some go as far and wide as 3 p.m. But what is collective is that the best time is noon. And aside from the sun giving the best quality of vitamin D at noon, our body also processes the vitamin D best at that time. So there's a correlation between the sun and the human body in the perfect creation of everything. But it does not mean that if you're out at 8 a.m. you will not get vitamin D. You will. The other thing is that what you're doing under the sun becomes important. If you're only going to come out to the sun to lie down and soak up, you cannot do that for an hour. I mean, every day. If you're active and you're active under the sun, maybe you're gardening, maybe you're doing whatever, then you're going to soak up that vitamin D. If you come out earlier and you stay out longer, then you still get the amount of vitamin D that you need. Midday is also the hottest time of the morning or the day. So you won't stay out too long because it gets pretty hot. And the minute you feel like now it's a bit much, I feel on my skin that it's much, you go back inside. So what are the importances of vitamin D? It's important in absorption of calcium, magnesium, and phosphate. So you can take all the magnesium that you want, all the calcium that you want. If you don't have vitamin D, then it cannot be absorbed into your system where you need it. It also helps promote cell growth. That's why all cells have a receptor for it. It also improves stem cell proliferation. It helps reduce inflammation. Now, COVID was predominantly an inflammatory disease. And that is why we were told to go and sit under the sun, get your vitamin D in. Or even they said that countries that had the sun all year round were not going to suffer as much. Or it seemed like that's what was their saving grace, that they were getting the sun, which is the vitamin D. It supports our immune system, and it also supports bone growth and strength. It also supports muscle growth and strength. Now, there's a particular report I looked at that said at least 1 billion people in the world are deficient. WHO recognizes vitamin D deficiency as a real problem, as a real big problem. Now, other reports say that a third of the world's population is vitamin D deficient. But why are we so deficient in a vitamin or hormone that we get from the sun that is abundantly available for everybody? There are a number of reasons. Number one is, and I started with this because this is where I fall as a person in my late 40s, the aging skin gets thicker. So it absorbs less, it allows less vitamin D to come in. So that is the first. The second is melanated skin. The darker the skin, the less sun rays penetrate easier. That means that, for me, that's such a great thing, because it means that we can stay out in the sun longer, and we get small doses of the sun rays, which then will make up what we need. So we have to stay out in the sun longer than our fairer counterparts, who come out and their skin tone allows a lot more rays to come in, so they stay a shorter time, get a good amount of vitamin D. If they stay out longer, they can get sick a lot quicker than we would. Especially now, I'm one of those who has an even richer melanated skin, because I'm more in like the much darker complexion, so that's why I can stay out in the sun this long. So the other one is people who don't have a gallbladder, means that they have reduced absorption generally of vitamin D. If you have inflammation in your gut, then your microbes will cause a blockage of the receptors of vitamin D. So we have to make sure that there's less inflammation in our gut, and people are really suffering with their guts. If you have liver disease, if you have kidney issues, you'll also be deficient in vitamin D. If you have diabetes, you'll also struggle. If we're consuming omega-6 oils, these will block the absorption receptors. So these omega-6 rich oils are the cooking oils that we use that are very readily available. This is the seed oils that we use to cook. Genetics. Some people genetically do not absorb vitamin D well, or they absorb but they do not convert it. And the sun is blessing me as I share this message with you. If you're obese, you struggle with vitamin D usage, because the fat cells in your body, remember that this is a fat soluble vitamin. So as it goes into your body, your excessive fat is going to hold the vitamin D in there, and it will not release it to be used inside the body. If you come from parts of the world that are colder, then at those times, obviously the sun is not out, so you have less access to it, and then vitamin D. And pollution. Obviously, if you're in a place that has large amounts of pollution, then you cannot see the sun, or the sun rays do not come down in their most natural abundant form. So people in those areas will generally be deficient. Now I want to look at different parts of the body and how vitamin D interacts with those parts. This is the one that really blew my mind. The brain. Vitamin D supports the circadian rhythm. That means our night and day, how we transfer from night to day, and that also plays a great role in how we sleep. So if you are deficient in vitamin D, you're going to struggle with sleep. If you're deficient, you're going to struggle with cognitive function, basically how well you process things and how well your brain functions. Regulation of mood. A lot of people who are depressed generally are low in vitamin D, and they say if you give a person who's depressed vitamin D supplements, they should show an improvement within an hour or a couple of hours. The heart. Vitamin D helps us manage inflammation in the heart, and it also lowers blood pressure. In our liver, it supports insulin sensitivity. The higher our insulin resistance, the more vitamin D we're going to need. It helps the insulin absorb calcium, because remember that insulin, when we eat, insulin comes and takes the nutrients out of the food we have eaten and delivers it to the cells where it's needed. So vitamin D is going to help insulin pull calcium from what we have consumed and take it to the cells where it's needed. It's also great for the treatment of hepatitis. For those who have it, vitamin D is a great help. In the kidneys, if you have low vitamin D, it can cause you to have kidney stones. And vitamin D also helps convert, or rather the kidneys help convert vitamin D to its active form so that it's then used by the body. There is a gland called the thymus. The thymus gland shrinks as we age. So does, and this thymus gland is a very, very great player in our immune system. So as the thymus gland shrinks with age, so does our immune system function generally. In the thymus gland is where we have our T cells and our B cells that help with our immunity. These are the ones that go and fight and kill off disease-causing microbes and things. So vitamin D supports this entire system. It controls cytokine storms. I heard about cytokine storms during COVID. When your system is fighting off disease and there's so much inflammation, if you have widespread inflammation, for example, and there's like your body is functioning in overdrive trying to manage this infections, then it can cause what is called a cytokine storm, and vitamin D helps to manage that, so that because people were actually dying from the cytokine storm being, going totally crazy. So vitamin D would control this so that then your body is able to fight the infection in a more controlled way. It also modulates an overreactive immune system. If it goes into overdrive, vitamin D is able to then help bring that back down to normal. It keeps viral infections in check. Remember that, again, for the period of the pandemic, vitamin D became so critical. This is the reason. It also helps manage autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune disease is where your body is generally attacking itself because it feels like those parts of you are foreign, or it doesn't recognize them. So the body starts to attack itself. Let's move on to the bones and our teeth. It improves absorption of calcium, which is very important and critical for our teeth and for our bones. In pregnancy, it's important that mothers have adequate amounts of vitamin D. Otherwise, it's going to translate to weak bones in the children that they will have. They'll have bones that cannot support their weight. They're softer, so a child ends up with excessive bow legs, flat feet, then there's, it can cause malformation of bones, even of the jaw. And I'm starting to think it might, because a lot of children now, this is me, I've not researched this yet, but a lot of children now have to wear braces because one of the dentists told me that because children are not eating hard food, their dental formula is basically a bit softer, so it's easier for the bones to kind of shift and their teeth to shift. But I'm starting to think maybe that's part of the malformation of the bones that is due to vitamin D deficiency, because I know that there's a whole mandible thing that also happens with the deficiency. Children will be born and they have an overbite. I know that an overbite is where I think the top teeth, shoot out further than the bottom teeth. So that's an overbite. I don't know if the under one is also the same, but that's basically what it is. Then for our joints, the arthritis, the osteoarthritis, the rheumatoid arthritis is also a result of a vitamin D deficiency. Then we also have osteopenia. We have osteoporosis. Now, as we grow older, we start to get brittle bones and weaker bones, so that if we fall, it's easier for our bones to break. They're more brittle. So that is, again, for us who are in our mid-years, to be very cognizant of. We're taking calcium and we're taking care of that component of what the body needs. But without the vitamin D, that calcium does not get to where it needs to get. Then in our sinuses, we have major receptors in a nasal cavity to protect us from viruses that come in as we inhale. Our skin, acne, vitiligo are all as a result of a vitamin D deficiency. I mean, this just made my jaw drop. It also causes, a vitamin D deficiency causes us to have a higher risk of melanoma. Melanoma is skin cancer. Our hair, autoimmune conditions like alopecia, having brittle hair, having dry hair, early graying, or hair loss due to menopause is also linked to a deficiency in vitamin D. Our eyes, vitamin D can slow down cataracts and slow down the progression of glaucoma. It also improves dry eye. I've always felt the urge to sit outside, especially early in the morning, and look up at the sky. Either I look directly into it, into the sun until I see the blue, or I look close enough that I feel like the rays are coming in. And I also used to think to myself, I need to do some research to understand why we're told not to look into the sun directly. How long can we look into the sun, and what happens when we do or we don't? So now I'm going to do that, knowing that vitamin D is important for the sun. It's just to understand what is safe, what is not safe. In our lungs, if you have pneumonia or bronchitis, vitamin D actually helps. And apparently during, like very many years ago, in the 30s probably, patients were taken to sit, like hospital beds were put out in spaces where the patients had to get direct sunlight into them to support them with that, even with tuberculosis. Then our adrenal glands, vitamin D supports, so our adrenal glands produce cortisol, okay? And for the cortisol to function, we need vitamin D. So as our cortisol levels go up, the body then demands vitamin D. So we need to have that, otherwise it will, as cortisol goes up, it's going to suck up all the vitamin D that we have, and then we become deficient. Then our pancreas. Pancreas is the gland that produces insulin. Insulin is the hormone that manages glucose in our bloodstream. And by managing glucose, it also takes nutrients from the food we have eaten, changes that glucose that we've consumed into fuel. It takes it to the cells, it takes nutrients to the cells in our bodies where the nutrients are needed. And it also helps turn excess glucose into fat so that we don't die. So So it's quite important that we have vitamin D to help the insulin pull what it needs, to help the vitamin. Okay, sorry, I got distracted there. The pancreas requires vitamin D to make insulin, but even that insulin requires vitamin D to draw calcium from the food that we have consumed. Then in our muscles, it helps in recovery and relaxation after you've done a good workout. And a workout in this case could be actual exercise, or it could be a long walk that you have taken, or you have had to run away from something or towards something, and the next day your muscles are aching. So vitamin D is going to be your friend to help you absorb magnesium that's in your system so that it can support your muscles. Then our thyroid. A lot of people suffer from a condition called Hashimoto's disease, and Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease. We've already seen that vitamin D helps with autoimmune disease, with the inflammation that comes from autoimmune disease. So it helps reduce that inflammation. And they say that from the research that if someone has Hashimoto's, if you give a dose of vitamin D, they should have relief quite quickly, because it goes directly to the inflammatory part of the sickness. So that is vitamin D and the different parts of our body. Now, the next one is, how do we improve our vitamin D statistics or vitamin D in our bodies? One is to get more sun. With the sun, there's a lot of controversy also. People say we don't need we shouldn't be in the sun so much. But when I think about how we are interacting with the sun, we actually sit. If I just sat here in the sun and I purpose to soak it up and get vitamin D in, it's going to appear like 10 minutes, 15 minutes is too much sun. But let's think about a day when we have to take a walk, or for one reason or another we don't have a car. We're in a place where we cannot drive, and we're going to walk under the sun. How long can we walk under the sun before we start worrying about vitamin D? In fact, if you are doing something else, you never think about vitamin D. If you're at a sports ground, you're never thinking, oh my God, this is too much vitamin D. It's more than 10 minutes, I should go back in. If you are playing with the kids outside, if you're gardening, if you are sitting and doing some work that requires you to be outside in the sun, no one is ever thinking, it's more than 10 minutes, I should get back in. So I'm questioning the science now that is saying, make sure you're only outside for 10 minutes. That is enough vitamin D. That actually is saying, don't go out. But to live life is to be outside the house, okay? So if I look at nature, and how we are living in nature, when we're not thinking about it, we actually stay out for long periods, and and I'm also speaking from my point of view as a melanated being, a highly melanated being, and also to see how life generally operates in my world, in Africa. Is that we spend so much time outside, either in the garden, or a lot of the work that people do in this country is outside, unless you are now living the modern life where you leave your house and go into an office. But if you're not doing that kind of work, you are actually spending a good amount of time out in the sun. So that's a great way to increase your vitamin D uptake. Then, if you don't have the luxury of the sun, you can take supplements. But you have to check that you don't have genetic blockers, because the supplement will still not work. What I've seen also from the research is that as you're taking supplements, cut back on taking calcium supplements, because the calcium that you have from your diet should be enough that you don't need that much more. It just needs to be translated into a form that the body can use, which the vitamin D supplements will already do. Otherwise, we end up having too much calcium, and that causes a different problem, which is calcification of certain parts or organs in our bodies, which is not good for us. Then we need to take more zinc, to up our intake of zinc, and also vitamin A. All these work together to improve the uptake of vitamin D inside our bodies. Magnesium also helps us to absorb vitamin D, while vitamin D also helps the body to absorb magnesium. So they work in tandem, they support each other. Then, one thing I did not say about vitamin D is that as we receive the sun into our skins, we need cholesterol to then change the sun rays into vitamin D. So people who are always worrying that, I don't want to eat eggs, or I don't want to drink milk, they don't want to eat eggs, they don't want to eat fatty meat, butter and things, because it's high in cholesterol. It is actually good cholesterol that is very, very, very necessary for us to consume. So make sure you're not eating a low cholesterol diet, and you have to understand there's a good cholesterol. I should actually make a video on what is deemed good cholesterol and what is deemed bad cholesterol, and why, and why we should consume them. Then there's also research that says that, or there's a school of thought that says that you have to eat fat while taking your vitamin D supplements. Because it is a fat soluble vitamin, you should have fat. And it could be something as simple as avocado to go with it. Some people say you don't need it because what we have in our system is already enough. Then we have to lower stress, because I talked about cortisol. When cortisol is consistently high, it zaps the vitamin D that we have in our system. So we have to pull back on stress, and this also supports us in so many other areas. We have to consume probiotics. Probiotics help us with our gut, and they also help us recycle the bile, which bile helps extract the vitamin D from food. So probiotics are generally good bacteria, quote unquote, good bacteria that is added into our system from the foods that we eat, the probiotic foods that we eat, so that it gives a boost to the bacteria or the microbiota or the biotics that is in our body to support us better. Then we also need to up our intake of bile salts. We need intense exercise, because it releases it just helps our system absorb the vitamin D better, or for the body to recognize and use the vitamin D that we have in the best form. And then the last one is that I learned in my studying vitamin D, I learned that there is a vitamin K2, which is very good for the vitamin D absorption, and we must have a vitamin K2 to support vitamin D. So I'm going to do another video on vitamin K2, because it actually turns out to be very, very important. So ladies and gentlemen, good people, that is the information I have on vitamin D. It is not just a vitamin, it's a hormone. It is not just the sun. It is a superpower. It is required by every single cell of our bodies, and we have seen how it is needed by pretty much all the organs in our bodies to help us. So let's go out and get that sun in. If you can't get the sun, you're going to get supplementation. And I think I will also do a video on how much vitamin D we actually need. See how sitting out here in the sun on the balcony has led me down this whole path of now more videos and more learning. I love, love, love this journey on wellness, because it's teaching me so much, and I can teach you as well. Thank you guys, and see you in the next video.